minutes past 8.
The Radio Wemo Breakfast.
Issues of the day under T-Radar.
Talking issues of the day, he's just fresh back from Tonga, in fact. It's T-Radar with us this morning. Morning, T-Radar.
Well, good morning to you, Wemo. How are you?
I'm well. Now, if I remember rightly, at the end of last week, of course, Tonga was in the path of the potential tsunami from Japan, but also had its own earthquake as well.
Yes, it did. Up near one of the northern islands that was affected by a tsunami some time ago. Fortunately, I was back in New Zealand at the time, but you kind of think, oh, jeepers. But very enormous place, Tonga, distance-wise, quite a long flight, probably 45 minutes or so up there from the main island. So I don't think it really did too much damage.
Yeah.
But terrible, It's you look at that tsunami that was in Japan, you think, man, if that hit Tonga, there would be very little Tonga left.
Well, that's right. I was really concerned on Friday night about some of those low-lying islands, Kiribati, Tuvalu, places like that, where would only take a metre wave or something just to roll over the top.
That's right. And I was listening yesterday on the wireless as I was driving back from New Plymouth, and they said, there was a doctor in a hospital over there in Japan, and they were on the 5th floor, and the wave reached up to the 4th floor.
Wow.
And I was just sort of driving through, looking at the height of trees and thinking, geez, that's quite a long way up.
Yeah, well, there's a photo in the Herald this morning of a ferry sitting on top of a building. It's just a very kind of small sort of 2-story building, and the ferry just nicely perched, just sitting there on top. And you can just imagine the water just completely going over the top. And if there's one thing that has come out of this disaster is the fact that we've been able to see it all around the world by all these videos that have been shared on YouTube. Quite different to the Boxing Day tsunami.
That's right. I think we really sort of saw a bit of sort of poor footage from that, and we saw the aftermath. But this one, just some stunning footage. One of the best sort of ones that I've seen is a guy who was filming it from sort of eye level, and then sort of had to keep going up the stairs. But just this wall of water that just kept coming and coming and coming. I think the video is about 6 minutes long.
Yeah. And
it still just rolls relentlessly in. And if anything, it's that kind of footage that may make a lot of other people finally get around to getting their emergency kit put together.
Well, that and also perhaps not be so tempted to stand on the beach and watch something like that come in.
I don't know. I'm not sure that we're ever going to get over that. That particularly in New Zealand, as soon as there's any warning of a tsunami, people head down to the beach, and I think there's been a bit of a stoush between some kind of a boating competition and civil defence. They hadn't released the all clear in the boating competition. It's going to go ahead with it anyway because it's not going to be too bad. But what's absolutely astounding is 800 kilometres an hour that wave crossed the ocean at.
Yeah,
which is a jet plane.
Well, as fast as a jet plane, yeah. I mean, it took about 12 hours to reach New Zealand, which is just a tiny bit longer than what it would actually take to fly from Auckland to Tokyo. But 20 hours later, it reached Gareth Morgan where he was staying.
Yes, I think he was on the Galapagos Islands, I believe, or somewhere over there, and Santa Cruz. Where is Santa Cruz? Actually, Galapagos Islands.
Yeah.
And yes, a 3-metre wave smashed into that. So. Yeah, absolutely astounding, really. God, amazing the power of nature.
Well, yeah, and the fact that something can happen on the other side of the world and it will travel those kinds of distances. Fingers crossed, of course, if there is any nuclear fallout or nuclear disaster, that won't travel too far.
Yes, and look, there's been some really interesting things coming out of Japan, various articles and things from people saying, look, you have to be aware that the Japanese there is no word, apparently, this is one of the great quotes, there's no word in Japan for being over-prepared. And they have systems upon systems upon systems designed in the event of this kind of thing. There was a chap who was saying that he was designed with putting computer systems together and for universities and various things like that. And they have something on there. If someone's checking, what their schedule is or something like that, and a tsunami or an earthquake or something like that happens, it immediately flashes up. Forget about your course, get to safety. This one particular chap was a translator, and he said even though he's in a place with only 150,000 people, he's on the list of of people to translate, and they have these fail-safe systems where you have to call the next person in the chain, and if you can't get onto them, you call the next person, and then someone's trying to call you to make sure that everyone's in place. So everything sort of works very well. And he says what's incredible is even though these power plants have sort of not worked according to plan, they could have worked a lot more not according to plan. And there's a lot of sort of discussion as to whether or not they are as dangerous as people are sort of letting on. Still, if I was over there, I'd probably be feeling a touch uncomfortable.
Yeah, well, I suppose you would, but there's a lot of there's a lot of misinformation coming out and a lot of mixed information, but also a lot of finger wagging about the fact that they have nuclear power stations in Japan on such a seismically active place. But one wonders, with that kind of population, how the heck else were they going to supply power if it wasn't coal or nuclear energy?
Exactly. I was thinking we'd be exporting an enormous amount of coal to Japan to keep them going. Enormous use of power over there. So, I guess in many ways, nuclear, and with a country with such a sort of nuclear history, I imagine they're going to be very, very careful about it and would have, I would imagine, some form of state-of-the-art systems. But then again, state-of-the-art systems are state-of-the-art at the time they're put in, and these are relatively old power stations, so we'll just have to wait and see. Maybe Ken Ring might know what could happen.
You mentioned his name on the show. I think there should be an alarm.
I
should be an alarm that goes off.
I only mentioned it because I'm looking forward to Nick Smith and the Skeptics Society. Have you seen what they're up to?
Yes.
Yes, going to go and find the highest and the oldest stone building, and they're going to have lunch in it on the day that Ken Ring has predicted some form of an earthquake. So, I'm a big fan of the Skeptics Society. I think wonderful sort of practical, down to earth folk who aren't a part of this sort of scaremongering of folks.
Yeah, they're off to the sign of the Kiwi, I think, aren't they? At the top of the hill there.
I believe so. Yes. So they should have had a banquet. They should have had a fundraising banquet, and people could have gone up there and participated.
Yeah.
We could have sent Rodney Hyde.
yeah. Let's talk about that at that ACT conference. Was it an ACT conference or was it a National Front conference? I was kind of confused.
No, certainly, definitely, I believe an ACT conference. Look, and the best quote I've seen of it has actually come from Bomber on his Tūmiki blog site. He said, Don Brash was on hand to explain that every Maori prayer spoken in public puts us further behind Australia. And I think that pretty much sums up the mood of the conference, at least as that displayed by the media. They had Willie Jackson there to sort of, I guess, illuminate them into where it was that ACT was going wrong. But for the rest of it, it just seemed to be, I don't know, the clutching at straws of a failed party. I know Roger Douglas came out and was fairly scathing of the government, and most right-thinking people probably simply ignored what he had to say and went on with their lives.
Yes, but that was interesting, inviting Willie Jackson along. I think he was a bit bemused about why he was there, but from what I can gather, he basically stood up and said, "Look, you're all lovely people. Rodney Hyde, you're actually a nice guy, a personal guy, but your policies are you're racist. You're all racists."
That's right. You're gonna end up playing the race card, and I guess people will continue to play the race card so long as the race card appears to work.
Yeah.
So, there's been a lot of discussion as to the future of ACT there and Epsom, and, a few names bandied forth as someone to run against him. John Banks, various other folk, even Don Brash. Are they going to form a new party called the Reform Party? We just don't know. So, nonetheless, is it the last grasp of the ACT conference? It would have been a great conference to have gone to, I imagine.
Maybe in your world, T. Radar. Is there any advice though for Phil Goff at the moment?
Yes, there is. Look, there was one of the guys behind the 42 Below vodka advertising campaign, a chap by the name of Daryl Parsons. He was a speaker there as well. He suggested Phil Goff just needs to be himself, to get rid of the image makers and be Phil Goff, the ordinary man. He said, you don't have to dye your hair, you don't have to ride the motorbike, just be you. And, that's what he's up against. John Key appears to be John Key. There doesn't appear to be a lot in the way of anyone massaging the image of who he is. He's just, he comes across in some ways as a slightly lovable doofus with the cold eyes of a snake. So, which he manages to hide. But full credit to him, he managed to raise a fair amount of money, whacking Shane Warne over the boundary at the celebrity cricket match for Christchurch over the weekend.
That was a good hit. Full respect.
Yes, can't imagine Helen Clark doing that. Did you think that when he was doing it? Thought, would Helen Clark have actually participated.
No.
Different, of course, being,
No.
probably, I was going to say probably a woman, but being a woman who had probably never played cricket.
Well, there's a big difference there between Julia Gillard and Helen Clark as well. Julia Gillard, I think, is quite she's quite open to throwing a football around, playing some league. But no, that wasn't Helen, really, was it?
You mean pandering to the electorate, Wemo?
Yeah, that's it.
Pandering to the constituency, showing them, oh, hey, look, I'm one of you. I can awkwardly throw a ball around as well.
Yeah.
No, I think Helen Clark may have decided that she had a certain gravitas beyond that sort of thing and maintained a stately level of dignity.
And indeed, she's still proving that. T Radar, thanks very much.
We'll speak again in a couple of weeks, actually.
And right, where are you off to next?
Well, this time next week I'll be either in Rwanda or Nigeria.
Crikey.
So I suspect Skyping from there probably a little difficult.
Yeah, fingers crossed, no tsunamis or earthquakes in that part of the world.
Hopefully not, but we'll speak again after that.
All right, T Radar.